we know there's going to be a tremendous amount of scaling over the course of the expansion, and a danger, and one that we saw come to pass in patch 7.15 when people had full Nighthold gear and powered up artifacts, was while world quests were still relevant, players were so strong relative to that content that it was actually disrupting the core game experience that we tune around. Like, when you're winding up a 2.5-second cast or a 2-second cast to begin a fight, and a warrior charges in and uses 2 GCDs to kill the mob within 1.5 seconds before your missile even hits the target, and you don't get credit despite being there and you thought you were about to attack a completely untapped, out-of-combat mob, that feels kind of broken. We're not looking to to limit or prevent the feeling of getting way, way, way stronger and returning to stuff that once gave you a challenge and crushing it. That's a core part of the endgame progression. We're just looking to set some guardrails to make sure that people aren't scaling so far beyond what our content really is built to support, and thus the core pacing and mechanics of WoW combat.
Okay, so what he's saying here is something that I agree with and I don't agree with. So first of all, I agree with that, yeah, let's say a warlock is casting a Shadow Bolt, and that takes like 2 seconds, and a warrior charges in and kills it immediately, like with 2 hits or something, is definitely stupid, especially if it's a named mob and you need it for the world quest. But on the other hand, it's either you can use the add-on World Quest Group Finder to actually get into a different shard and maybe have the chance of getting the mob over there, or just wait, like, I don't know, what's the respawn time of a named mob nowadays? 20 seconds or 30 seconds? It's definitely less than a minute. So that's basically waiting a minute maximum to getting the second chance, and I don't know, instead of charging the Shadow Bolt and running into it again, maybe use one of your curses, or everyone has like an instant spell, even like melees or so have an instant range spell. I don't know, warriors can leap into battle or throw the weapon. I think it's weapon throw, I think the cast. Mages have Frostlands, and yeah, I guess you all know what kind of spells you have, just to tag them up so that it's yours. So because you don't even need to deal damage, as long as you tag it, for example, with what is actually not grabbing any aggro, but that is, I think there's no spell anymore. Maybe taunt. I don't know if taunt is actually one, but you see. So even if you just taunt it and someone else just wrecks it in 2 hits or something, it's still your tag. As far as I know, taunt works as well. Anyway, the point that he is going to most likely go to now, even though I've seen the video, I'm not 100% sure where he's going with this, especially right now. But so that increasing the life of the monsters in the world is the solution. So making a fight, so every single fight, not just one fight or so, I don't know, let's say we are doing 10 world quests or something, so increasing the time that you need to kill them by like every monster, for example, by 1 minute, increases the time you need to spend on world quests by 10 minutes. Especially because it's going to be even worse for the guys that are not geared as a Nighthold, what he's referring to, Nighthold Heroic or Mythic Raider or something. That you just basically like started your game and you reached 120 and you dive into World Quest or something, then it takes you like 1.5 minutes or something to kill one of the World Quest monsters. And it comes, furthermore, they are not challenging those monsters. They are not increasing the damage or the amount of abilities or something. They're just increasing the health of the mob. So the difficulty of the mob stays the same. Yeah, you have to run away a little bit longer, but I don't know. If you can run away like 20 seconds, you can run away 30 seconds or 40 seconds as good as you did with 20 seconds. And some of the monsters in the world actually only have like 2 abilities in the first place. One ability is melee auto attack, so which is only interesting for melees, because ranges are supposed to be never around the stuff. So I don't know. Warlocks can fear, mages can slow them with frost and stuff. They can stun and so on. So they should never reach you, or I don't know, get a pet as a hunter or something like this. So you should never be. So the melee damage of the mob is totally irrelevant to any caster. And then it depends, because they only have usually a second spell, which is then either important for you or you can totally ignore it. So for example, there are mobs out there currently, right now, that are casting a cleave, even though the player is not even close to that monster. So they are going to cast something that is totally irrelevant, that makes no sense in the first place that they're casting it. Because, I mean, if it would make sense if you are close, if there's a player close or something, and they would attack this. But they are just randomly casting a cleave ability in front of them for no reason. And as I said, so and increasing their health doesn't improve or increase the difficulty of the mob. It just lengthens the fight itself. But yeah, let's go on.
So some actual numbers here. All right, roughly, for every 10 item levels or so that you get, I think there was actually a pretty good post on Reddit digging into the numbers here. Creatures in the world will end up with 3 to 4% more health, and that scaling only starts once you're getting into Dungeon Blues territory. So we've seen feedback, and part of why we didn't respond to this initially, actually, I know there's a lot of discussion, a lot of people asking us questions, we wanted to make sure we didn't miss something.
Right.
Because when there's hundreds of people saying, hey, your game is broken, mobs are scaling out of control, we didn't want to just come back and say, no, they're not, without making sure that, we're certainly not perfect. And we're like, oh, crap, everyone thinks this is happening. Let's really dig into this. And so we spent a lot of time digging through the numbers, digging through the code, testing ourselves, having QA help us with this, and we found that it's all working as intended. Some actual numbers. If you hit max level at eye level 280, which is pretty typical, 280, 285, after a couple of weeks, you've done some heroic dungeons, you've done some mythic dungeons, your eye level is like in the 330, 340 range, you're probably 60, 70% stronger than you were when you first hit max level. You're going to have tens of thousands more health. And instead of hitting for 5,000, you're going to be hitting for 7,000, 8,000. From that whole gain, mobs might gain an extra 7,000, 8,000 health. They might gain 15% health from all of that. You're getting 60% stronger. The mobs are scaling at a much slower rate compared to that. You are and should be getting stronger.
Yeah, they're like 15 to 20% stronger at that point.
Exactly. And I think, and just to be clear, philosophically, completely recognize progression is a core.
And this is exactly what I mean. I'm just going I'm not going to talk too much now. This is exactly what I mean. It is just increasing the health. The difficulty stays the same, Mr. Ion Hazekostas. Please, just come on. Start thinking. The difficulty does not increase. It's just a time sponge you are creating here. You are unnecessarily wasting players' time by doing so.
Core part of RPGs in general. It's a core part of World of Warcraft. The goal isn't that, hey, this world quest that took you 5 minutes to complete the day you hit 120 still takes you 5 minutes to complete weeks later. It's going to be a fraction of that time in the long run, and that's completely by design. Now, with regard to the specific question, I think if there are specific enemies that feel like they are absorbing a lot of damage, there are definitely some outliers there that we've been tweaking, some world quest targets or some quest bosses in the world that just have more health than they should. Those are mob-specific outliers, but the pacing around the game as a whole is something that we actually feel we have a pretty good handle on, and it's playing out the way we expected. Now, there's also some issues with individual specs and their performance, and that's something that, as I alluded to at the start of the talk, we're going to be digging into very soon.
Yeah.
Another point I want to make that he totally ignores right now here is, and even though it's not done often, but players like me that have a brain, So that doesn't mean so what I'm going to say, if you don't do that, you might most likely haven't recognized it, that it's better to do so. So doesn't I don't want to insult you that you don't have a brain. It's just something that if you think about it a little bit, it makes sense. So let's say you see a guy just starting to attack the heroic world quest boss, whatever. Let's say, I don't know, it is 4 Seer Iron Hazikostas. It's a miner in a cave or something that you have to kill for the world quest. So the right thing to do now would be you waiting for the mob to drop to like 10%. And yes, this sounds counterintuitive, but actually it makes sense once I explain it. So if you hit the monster immediately, he will gain the additional health. So let's say he had 100,000 health before, and then you hit it, bam, 150,000 health, because the scaling has impacted then. So you actually made the monster 33.33333 and so on, times harder than it was before. If you hit him at 10%, which is obviously 10% from 100,000 is 10,000 HP. If you hit him then, he will still gain the 33%, but only off of 10,000 HP. So he would get 3,000 in 5,000 HP, sorry. 5,000 HP instead of 50,000 HP. So basically the best thing you can do is the stuff that you don't want to do, and it's being AFK until someone has finished it. There are some situations where my example doesn't fit. For example, if a, let's say, 280 player is attacking a mob, then this will take way longer, obviously, than a full Uldir Mythic geared player. But so he obviously gets the mob down way faster. So if the Mythic geared player would actually help the 280 item level player, then it would actually, even though he would increase the HP in the first place, it would be faster because he's just so much dealing so much damage. But as I said, basically it would still be the best thing to do to wait. So actually not playing the game is more effective than actually helping someone out. And that's a big flaw, in my opinion, with this system that he hasn't even addressed, and most likely not even realized yet in the entire Q&A team, because I've never seen someone from Blizzard talking about it.
Yeah, and I know we've already done a couple of hot fixes to specific world quests also that were like either not enough mobs respawning, or certain like bosses for the like elite world quests had too much health or something like that. So those are things that we can fix as well.
Totally.
But yeah, the core of what I'm getting here is, yes, there's a small amount of scaling. You should be scaling much faster than the mobs are actually scaling.
Yep.
And it is still very, very important that you can eventually just obliterate.
Also, just to dispel some other rumors, we've changed nothing here. Like, I've seen threads that were speculating that, oh, you used to be able to unequip your gear or put it in the bank, and that made the world easier. But, oh, Blizzard Ninja hotfixed it. This is literally, as it's worked since March 2017. We have touched nothing. So, and the reason why we also didn't make a bigger deal of this or, discuss it in depth in the past is this is just how Legion, this is how all of Argus worked, this is how all of Broken Shore worked, this is how World of Warcraft has worked for the last 15 months. And if power scaling over the course, if you played through Legion, and as you geared up in Antorus, if Argus felt appropriately easier for you over time, that was the system working as we intended. And so we felt like it was something that was working well. Obviously, there's been a lot of recent discussion around it and people concerned with the approach we've taken, which has led to us re-examining it.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and move on. Question here from Odin, semi-related actually, who asked, what is the development team's thinking behind the power gain of leveling? I and many others feel weaker as we level through BFA, which feels counterintuitive to level progression in an RPG. So kind of talking about similar general concept, but rather than once I'm at max level and I'm gaining more gear and mobs are scaling up, this is literally just talking about as I'm progressing from 110 to 119, basically.
This is a very valid criticism, and it's a concern that we share. It's something we're talking about on a regular basis, and how to do better on next time. This has been a somewhat awkward aspect of leveling in a new expansion in World of Warcraft forever, like literally since Burning Crusade. Because to some extent, an expansion represents a reset. It represents catch-up for those who didn't play the last expansion. It represents a fresh start as you begin a new journey through gearing up and overcoming the challenges that a new world has to offer.
Green is the new purple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or the new orange, as the case may be. But yeah, so I mean, if you think back to Mists of Pandaria, let's say, when you started out, or Warlords or any of those expansions, you were probably crushing things in Jade Forest or Frostfire / Shadow Moon. And then by the time you were halfway through the expansion, you were starting to have a slightly tougher time with those mobs. They weren't melting quite as quickly. And then when you hit max level, things in Dread Wastes or things in Nagrand, in Warlords, they actually put up a good fight, and they were dangerous. You couldn't pull 3 of those mobs at the same time, at least when you first hit max level. But then as you got dungeon gear, as you eventually got epics, things shifted back. But that didn't feel the same way. It felt like, oh, well, of course, these mobs are tougher because, well, Nagrand is dangerous. Frostfire is full of weaklings that I can go crush, but this is, you know, the home of some of the mightiest forces of the Iron Horde, and so I need to gear up before I can overcome them. That made sense in traditional RPG contexts. The flip side there is that when you hit max level, like 90+% of the world was completely irrelevant to you because it was full of these low-level mobs that offered no challenge, no rewards. And so you spent a few hours, you might have spent 1 or 2 days playing.
You mean those things that became irrelevant after like 2 or 3 weeks because world quests are no fun, like it is right now on BFA? So even though I made fun of him here in this quite obvious statement, I just don't see how BFA or World Quiz are fixing this issue that you're hitting a brick wall. Especially, in my opinion, you have the issue that I'm tackling in another video. So, for example, that one issue that I'm having right now is, let me find the right one. Yeah, this one here, for example. So, this one was my previous one. Let me put it on. So this was my previous one, and as you can see, it's an Azeroth gear, and I had unlocked 2 Azeroth things. So now, because it is a more higher item level and gives me more intellect and stuff like this, it still feels a little bit, at least, like a downgrade, because from a blue 325 item that has 2 traits, I switched to a higher item level but with less traits. Obviously, over the course of time, I will unlock the trait number 17, 21, and 25 on this one. But it's still, once you put this on right now, it feels like a downgrade. The only difference that you do, obviously, or the only difference you get is the little bit of armor. Who cares? As a clothy anyway. If you get hit, then yeah, your tank is dead, and you have bigger issues than your armor right now. But anyway, so you obviously get more stamina and more intellect, but it still feels like a downgrade at first if you put it on, because you have less traits, for example. I tackled this issue in my top 10 most hated things about BFA currently. So if you want a more deeper look into that issue, then I will definitely recommend watching this one. But yeah, I just and the thing that he is talking about right now. So basically, you are 110. Let me actually open Paint. So I'm gonna do something really fancy right now. So basically, what happened here was you were at your highest at like 110. Then you dropped totally down here, once the BFA pre-patch hit, so you felt like a weakling again. Everything was really hard again because of the scaling and so on. You slowly increased in power again up until the point that you hit level 120, and basically you dropped like this again. There were some areas where level 110s or 111s were able to kill level 120 players because of the bad scaling, because yeah, they were like growing in power, and you basically as 120 hit a brick wall. For players like me, like mythic players, we basically immediately go into dungeons with guild groups and do heroics. So this little drop here is not as big for us as for the casual players.